Just before dawn on March 24th, 1998, Ron Bradley got up to check on his family. Everyone was asleep in their rooms, except his daughter Amy, who was out on the balcony. He went back to bed, but when he woke up again, a short while later, she was gone. There were no clear answers and no obvious trail to follow. It was the kind of disappearance that left investigators puzzled from day one. The events leading to Amy Bradley's disappearance started earlier in 1998 when her father, Ron Bradley, won an all-expenses-paid family cruise through work. The whole family was excited, but there was a small problem.
Amy was not a fan of the ocean or being in it.
She was 23, an accomplished swimmer, and had even worked as a lifeguard. But she also had a fear of heights and wasn't too keen on being stuck on a massive ship in the middle of the ocean. Still, she decided to go along for the trip. March 21st, 1998, Amy, her father Ron, her mother Iva, and younger brother Brad boarded the Royal Caribbean International cruise ship Rhapsody of the Seas, bound for Curacao. For the first 2 days, everything seemed to be going smoothly.
On the boat, we're messing around in the casino. We have dinners with, everybody, my parents' coworkers, and, just having a good time.
After dinner on March 23rd, Ron and Iva decided they'd had enough fun for one day and headed back to the family's cabin on the 8th deck. Amy and her brother Brad, on the other hand, decided to stay out a bit longer. The siblings ended up attending a disco party on the ship's 9th deck. They partied late into the night, drinking and dancing with members of the ship's band, Blue Orchid. Later, Amy was seen dancing with one of the band's members, Alistair Yellow Douglas. After a long night of partying, Brad headed back to the cabin first. Amy followed a few minutes later, but instead of going straight to bed, she joined him on the balcony. They talked for a bit, enjoying the quiet and the view, until Brad decided to turn in, leaving Amy outside alone. Between 5:15 and 5:30 a.m. the next morning, Ron woke up and saw Amy asleep in a chair on the balcony. He went back to bed, but when he got up again at 6 a.m., she was gone. He searched the ship's common areas for half an hour with no luck, then woke Iva and Brad to tell them Amy had vanished. The Bradleys immediately suspected something was wrong because Amy wasn't the type to leave her family cabin without saying where she was going. They told the crew she was missing, but with over 2,000 passengers on board, finding her was going to take time. For the Bradleys, nothing else mattered except finding Amy. So they came up with a plan and went straight to the crew with it.
You've got to put out a picture. You've got to make an announcement that she's missing. We need help.
They also asked that no passengers be allowed to leave the ship until she was found. For all they knew, Amy could have been anywhere on that massive ship, and there was a chance someone on board had seen her or noticed something that could point them in the right direction. But instead of acting fast, the crew said it was too early to make an announcement since most passengers were still asleep. On top of that, they said they couldn't stop anyone from getting off the ship. By the time the crew finally made the announcement at 7:50 a.m., plenty of passengers had already disembarked. It didn't help that they didn't seem to treat the situation with any real urgency, only starting a proper search around noon. Even then, the outcome was devastating.
Every nook and cranny of this ship has been searched. Your daughter is not on this ship.
While the Bradleys were scrambling to find Amy, a few passengers came forward with what they'd seen that morning. They claimed Amy had been on the upper deck with Alistair Douglas, the band member she'd been dancing with, sometime between 5:30 same elevator, and witnesses said Douglas handed her a dark-looking drink. The two spent some time together, and then at about 6 a.m., Douglas was spotted leaving the deck alone. Amy's brother Brad would later recall that Douglas approached him shortly after she vanished.
He comes up to me, and the first thing he said was, he said, "Hey man, I'm sorry to hear about your sister."
The action in itself wasn't out of place, but the timing was strange. Amy had only been gone a short while, and no public announcement had been made yet. So how exactly did Douglas know she was missing? By this point, it was obvious this wasn't just a case of someone wandering off, so the authorities were brought in. During the investigation, they tried to retrieve Amy's pictures from the ship's photo service, which took photos of passengers and displayed them at a booth for sale. That's when they discovered something strange.
Her pictures were missing about 9 to 10 hours before she disappeared.
Every single photo of Amy had been pulled from the display, as if someone wanted to erase any proof she'd ever been on that ship. While the authorities were still trying to make sense of the missing photos, Douglas was officially named a person of interest, but not for long. When the FBI questioned him, he insisted he knew nothing about Amy's disappearance. They put him through a polygraph test, and when he passed, they had no choice but to let him go. At first, some people assumed Amy might have accidentally fallen overboard or taken her own life. But the deeper investigators dug, the less those theories made sense. There was no evidence to back them up, and Amy was a trained lifeguard, so the chances of her accidentally falling off the ship and drowning were very slim. Still, the Dutch Caribbean Coast Guard spent the next 4 days searching the surrounding waters for Amy. The search involved boats, 3 helicopters, and a radar plane, but they couldn't find her. Just like that, Amy was gone, and the authorities had no traces, no leads, and no solid suspects. But her family refused to accept that as the end.
And being anxious and being upset, we have got to stay focused and positive.
The Bradleys announced a $250,000 reward for information leading to Amy's safe return, and a $50,000 reward for any information that could lead to her current location. About a month after the disappearance, things took an interesting turn. The Bradleys were in Curacao, asking around, hoping someone might have seen Amy on the island. While walking through the streets, they came across a cab driver who said he had seen her on March 24th when the ship docked. The man described the color of Amy's eyes as green and claimed he had seen her running through a parking lot that day, urgently searching for a phone. He went ahead to say he had seen her a few more times on the island, but investigators could not verify his claims. A few months later, another report about Amy came in. 2 Canadian divers told investigators that they had seen her on a beach in Curacao with 2 aggressive-looking men. One of the men they described bore a striking resemblance to Douglas. Another one of the witnesses claimed that when Amy heard him speak in English, she immediately whipped her head around and looked at him. One of the men with her then led her to a nearby beach bar, and even though she never spoke to the witness, she kept locking eyes with him. His account was detailed, but the FBI couldn't confirm it. Another notable sighting of Amy happened in January 1999, but the man who had seen her, U.S. Navy Petty Officer William Hefner, didn't report the sighting until 2002. He claimed that one day he was sitting in the bar area of a brothel in Curacao when a woman approached approached him. According to him, she identified herself as Amy Bradley and told him that on the day she disappeared, she had left the ship and wandered into Curaçao in search of drugs. Unfortunately, she fell into the wrong hands, and since then, she had been held against her will. Hefner admitted he hadn't reported the sighting sooner because he was worried it would ruin his military career, since he wasn't supposed to be at a brothel in the first place. By the time he finally came forward, it was too late. The FBI looked into it, but the brothel had burned down, and there was no trace of Amy's presence there. In the years following Amy's disappearance, numerous reports surfaced from people who believed they had seen her in various locations. However, only a few of these accounts were significant enough to capture investigators' attention. Those are the ones we'll focus on next. In 1999, a man named Frank Jones contacted the Bradleys with information about Amy. He claimed to be a former U.S. Special Forces officer who knew Amy was being held and could help get her out. Frank asked the Bradleys for money to plan and execute a rescue operation, and they sent him over $200,000. Their hopes came crashing down when they learned that Frank was never a Special Forces officer. He was a con artist. Although he was later arrested in 2002 and sentenced to 5 years in prison, Frank's actions derailed the Bradleys' search for their daughter for almost 2 years. In 2003, 2 women claimed they saw Amy on the streets of San Francisco with 2 men. They said she looked at them with pleading eyes, but before they could try to help her, the 2 men took her away. Another reported sighting happened in 2005. A woman claimed she had seen Amy in the restroom of a department store in Bridgetown. She said Amy walked into the restroom, followed by 4 men, who were discussing something that sounded like an illegal deal. The witness claimed that the men later left the restroom, and that when she got a chance to speak to Amy, the FBI followed every sighting, lead, and claim, but each time they came up empty. There was no trace of Amy. Not even a single personal belonging was ever found. Over the years, theories about her disappearance have multiplied. Some still believe she may have taken her own life, while others suspect she was abducted and trafficked. Many still suspect Douglas, the band member, yet he continues to insist he had nothing to do with it. Whatever the case, the Bradleys remain hopeful that one day Amy will be found. In July 2025, Netflix released a 3-part documentary series titled Amy Bradley is Missing. It has been 27 years since Amy disappeared, and the questions about what happened to her and where she might be remain unanswered.